Hey YouTube, Gordon Miller here. Okay, we're continuing our mentor series. And so the mentor that I want to talk about next, I talked about how one of my major mentors in the government contracting space was Milt Long and with TMG, Technology Management Group. And Milt kind of gave me my first start. And and I appreciated that. I mean, it was a really great opportunity, and it led to other opportunities which were also pretty amazing. The next one I want to bring up two folks as because they kind of go together. Um, the next opportunity for the Army contract was one where we were brought in for IV&V, independent verification and validation on an effort, and the company that brought us in, really, they had like 11 people that were working, but only three were really kind of doing any major contribution to whatever was being coded. And so I, I made the um, I made the choice to inform the government, the Army, that the group was just they're just sort of billing time, but they're not really producing a whole lot of work product. And the company got really upset the night before because they insisted on seeing my review, and they're like, "Well, you can't give this review. You're fired." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know how this IV&V thing goes, but the whole idea of independent verification and validation would seem to be that it's independent." And they're like, "Well, I don't care. You can't give this one. It'll destroy us. And I'll make sure you never get another government contract ever again." And I was like, "Well, I tell you what, this may be my last government contract, and that's probably okay by me. But I'm going to give the report, and and that's all it is, And so they're like, "Well, it's not going to go well for you." I'm like, "Okay, great." So gave my report. Basically said that this company had 11 people billing, that they had done essentially the work product of three people, and that it was very inefficient and not going very well. And and the government lead uh, is Frank Polster, and Frank stood up and he goes, "Thank God, finally, somebody who's willing to tell me what's going on here." He goes, "I want that guy," talking about me, "on all my contracts until I retire." And he said, as far as you, talking about the people that the contract team, he goes, "I want you out of the building." He goes, "Clean out your desk, get your stuff, you're done." And of course, one of the people for the team who had hired me for the IV&V, who didn't like my thing, they were sort of went kicking and screaming. And they said, "Look, you think it's so damn easy. Why don't you do it?" And I was like, "Okay." I said, and I turned to Frank and I said, "Well, Frank, part of the problem with our analysis shows that the rates are way too low. I mean, they're like $67 an hour for some of these things." I said, "I tell you what, if you double the rate and give me half the people, then I could I could see that working." And I said, "You still save one FTE, one full-time equivalent, and we'll work with whatever the rates are that we can, but it would need to be higher." And so they gave us the positions, and we continued to work on that project for 5 years, from 1998, from April of '98 to April of 2003. And that was on the Army Training Portal. It trained at Army.mil with the Army Training and Doctrine Command at the Army Training Support Center at Fort Eustis. And so Frank was a tremendous mentor to me in terms of helping me understand government contracting from the government side. And I appreciate that. The other two mentors that I got a chance to work with in that process was Dave Bolt and Ray Shinol. So Ray, Dave, myself, and one other, Mark Cosby. Mark is the other mentor that I want to bring up. Dave and Ray were associates of mine on the contract. They were actually SPAWAR Navy people working on the Army contract. So they were contemporaries of mine, but at roughly the same age. And they were just amazing guys. And the four of us, Mark Cosby, Dave Bolt, Ray Shinol, and Frank Polster, and myself, all five of us were really part of a significant amount of the decision-making process for how the architecture went and how everything else, was going to be mapped out. And I got a chance to play a major role in that. Colonel Bob Reddy came back from that during that time. So, and Bob was another great mentor in this group of people. Bob was 35 or 30 some year veteran of the program. He had come back from retirement just to run this program, which required some kind of like special act of God in Congress to make that happen. But the funny thing about Bob Reddy was the fact that he was one of the smartest guys I've ever known. And I remember giving my presentation to Bob. Mark Cosby said, look, you need to brief the old man, and so get your slides together and go meet with him. And I'm like, okay. And so I was bringing Colonel Reddy up to speed, and we would walk into this conference room, or into his office. There's a conference area and a large desk, and it's a big room. And against the wall, adjacent to the conference table, on his side of the table, within reach, is an M16, magazine in, I'm sure, loaded. So, and so it was a pretty intimidating kind of thing. And so I kind of walked through these initial slides, and we're probably about like 5 minutes, 6 minutes in maybe. And Bob goes to me, he goes, son, how many more slides you got? And I'm like, well, sir, I have a total of 63 slides. 63 slides? What are you talking about? He said, I tell you what, when you do a presentation to me, don't have more than 6 slides. He said, if you can't get it into 6 slides, then, too bad. But never bring more than 6 slides. And he goes, you've already done 2 in the last 5 minutes. So you got 4 more. So pick your 4. And I was like, okay. So, so when I picked the 4 slides out of the 63, I said, can you give me a minute? And he's like, sure. And so I picked the slides out and, shuffling the paper and stuff. And this is a PowerPoint presentation. And I got done, and he goes, outstanding. Those were good. There were 6 good slides. And that began the great relationship I had with Colonel Bob Reddy. And I still remember in the meetings, I would present something and things like that. And he would be like, well, I don't know nothing. I'm just a dumb old Army Ranger. And I knew whatever he was going to say next. I knew that I was done, that whatever I had overlooked or whatever I had gotten wrong, I knew I was screwed. So, I'm just a dumb old Army Ranger, and I was like, oh, geez. So, of course, whatever he would say, he was completely right. And I was wrong a number of times, and I'd either approached it wrong or I'd come at it wrong, or, things like that. But, Bob Reddy was a phenomenal guy. And I love you, Bob. I really do. And you taught me a lot. I mean, you taught me the importance of the command structure and why it's in place, and how important it is to respect the chain of command and how that works. And you were an amazing leader. I mean, just one of the best leaders I've ever known. Just a born leader. And you were tough but fair. And I think that was a tremendous quality. I appreciate that. And Frank Polster. I mean, Frank, you were a phenomenal friend throughout the process. Your unwavering support for what we did and everything else, and the work we did subsequently in the work that we did together with the Army Reserve and the National Guard and things like that. I really do appreciate your friendship and taking the chance on adding us to the team. I really do. Dave Bolt and Ray Shinol are now, essentially Dave Bolt has taken Frank Polster's place as the head of that program and on the government side, and Ray Shinol is the technical lead. And Ray and Dave were phenomenal in that process. And I love you guys. I mean, it was a great opportunity to work with you guys again recently on the Phase 1 program for the the Army Training Information System, and I appreciate the opportunity to work with you guys again. It's always great. I mean, 20 plus years together, off and on, has been phenomenal. But the one that stands out in this one group is really Mark Cosby. When Mark was the program manager for the SAIC team, Science Applications International Corporation, and SAIC was the prime contractor for the effort. G3 Systems was a subcontractor to SAIC. And when Mark Cosby retired from SAIC, he ended up coming on board in a chief technical position, chief technology officer position for G3. He really believed strongly in what we were doing. Mark died several years ago, and it was a huge loss. I credit Mark with a couple things. So I did my PhD work while I was faculty at Virginia Tech, because PhD work was free. And so I took classes and things like that. But I never finished I never did the dissertation and never got the degree conferred, even though I took a lot of the coursework that was necessary for that. And when I met Mark had the same opportunity. He was like 4 or 8 credits shy of getting his PhD. And but he was an Air Force guy. And so he said that they told him that once he got his PhD, he was too valuable. They had invested way too much in him, and so they were not going to allow him to fly anymore. And Mark was like, well, then I'm not going to finish my PhD. And because he enjoyed doing what he was doing so much, that flying meant that much to him. And Mark took a chance on letting me participate in the process for the architecture for the Army Training Information System. And between Dave Bolt, Ray Shinol, myself, and Mark Cosby, we helped implement the vision that Frank Polster and Colonel Bob Reddy had for the system. And I really do. I mean, it was a 150 something person team, I think, or 156 million or 158 million. I forget how many people there were on the team, but a lot. And so I really do appreciate all the opportunities that whole contract afforded me in being able to work with that really unique group. There's some other great individuals in there. John Everett. Everett was deputy program manager, went on to do work at the FBI and things like that. And John was Special Forces, and demonstrated why those Special Forces guys are always first choice for anything like that having to do with program management. They could take all the heat from the project and just keep right on focusing on getting stuff done. So I learned a tremendous amount from all those guys. So Colonel Bob Reddy, Frank Polster, Mark Cosby, John Everett, and then Ray Shinol and Dave Bolt are all part of that group. I mean, it's one big effort. I learned a lot. I mean, my largest personal and professional growth, I think, was in that 98 to 2003 time frame. And it's funny, Frank Polster used to joke later on after the end of the contract, and I was awarded my challenge coin for the Army Training Support Center. He said, well, Gordon's been with us a long time, seems like a long time at least. He said, when he came here, he was single. And I met my wife during the contract, where just before the contract, we had actually met in March of 98, and we got the contract in April of 98, but we weren't married. And he said when Gordon came to us, he was single, no kids, and driving a sports car. And he said, now he's married, has kids, and is driving a sedan. So it was, Frank was always, had a great way of putting it into perspective. But I appreciate all of you guys, Bob and Frank and Dave and Ray, and all you guys. I mean, John Everett, I don't keep up with you as much as I used to, but it's, I'm not on Facebook as much anymore. Some of you guys are more active than others on Facebook, and but look, I miss you guys, and It's been great, and I really appreciate that. Was probably the best 5 years of my life in terms of personally and professionally. I had my first two kids on the contract. I was traveling 50,000 miles a year, driving from Blacksburg to Northern Virginia on Sunday nights, driving down to Newport News on Monday after the meeting in Newport in McLean, working Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays on the contract, and then driving back home on Thursdays. And it was a lot of work and it was a lot of effort, but it was worth it. 400,000 soldiers a day live and die by the system, and it's a system that means a lot to me. So, but thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to working with some of you all again. Thanks.